My name is Alexis Woods, and I'm a student at Liberty University. In my presentation today, I'm going to focus on helping the poor and needy. What does it mean to be poor? Someone who is poor suffers from the lack of basic essentials to live. In 2012, 15% of the U.S. population were living below the poverty threshold. Poverty is not just an economic issue, it takes a physical toll and causes poor nutrition and stress. Poverty can cause homelessness, drug abuse, depression, and being isolated from friends and family. It also causes emotional strain because the person can be viewed by others as unworthy. Having the basic needs for life is essential for a person's self image, self respect, and social status. Most of us take the basics for granted. I know I do. When a person does not know where their next meal will come from, or if they will have a place to sleep, or if they will even have clean water to drink or bathroom to use, unfortunately, that defines a person. Poverty is dehumanizing for everyone. The Bible provides us with directions on how to live a life of goodness. We should always help the poor and needy and always do what Jesus would have done in this situation. The Bible contains passages which provide us instructions from God to help those in need. There are many passages in both the Old and New Testament which direct us to live in a Christian manner and to take care of those who need our help. For my project, I have chosen 3 books from the New Testament. There are numerous examples in the Bible, so my selections are just merely a small sample. The 3 books are Galatians, James, and Philemon. The main theme identified in these books is equal treatment of people. Each book speaks about ways to live a life of goodness and helping others. I will discuss each book separately. In order to understand my choices, I will also provide some historical context I feel is relevant. The first book I would like to discuss is the Galatians. The Apostle Paul wrote a letter to the churches in the Roman province of Galatia to urge the Galatians not to fall from the grace of God. Paul makes an appeal for people to share responsibility for each other. He addresses how people should behave towards one another. Paul writes that there is no difference in people, and he provides guidance on building relationships among people. Paul states, "Love your neighbor as yourself." He says to serve one another through the love. When we serve our neighbors, our actions are what Jesus would have done. We should always demonstrate the characteristics that Christ showed when dealing with other people. When reading the Bible, we see Jesus taking care of the person. He puts any materials needed first when helping people. This is what faith is all about in serving God. Paul's purpose, the mutual sharing of difficulties and telling his readers to carry one another's burdens. Paul's message can be extended to us today. We have a responsibility to challenge what exists today and to advocate the rights for all people. Paul also prevents virtues that are the fruit of the Spirit, which include love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faith, gentleness, and self-control. The fruit of the Spirit are what we need to provide to others. If we fill ourselves with the fruit of the Spirit, we will have positive impact on people. The next book I would like to turn to is the book of James. James was the son of Mary and Joseph and the half-brother of Jesus. He was an early Christian leader. James preached that you should not just hear the word, but also act on the word by doing good works. The theme of the letter was how one should respond in justice. In the book of James, he writes that people must act faithfully by doing good works to those in need. James states, "You see that a man is justified by works and not by faith alone." James writes that people should live like Jesus and care for those in need and suffering. He says to take care of one another and wanted people to help each other. James wants his readers to care about the widow and the orphan. This phrase means the poor, suffering, and exploited. James is upset about the poverty he sees, and he wants his readers to respond, like Jesus would, and offer assistance to the poor. James uses the word righteousness. When James uses this word, he is referring to people living in poverty. In James's day, there was a social injustice and the poor were suffering. In his letter, he is hard on the wealthy and reminds his readers to care for the poor and suffering. The last book I would like to speak about is Philemon. In Paul's letter to Philemon, Paul is asking Philemon to take back the runaway slave. Paul's intentions was to bring out a fundamental change in their relationship. Not like a master would treat a slave, but a brother or as an honored guest. The culture at the time was very stereotyped, and this drove how people viewed themselves and others and the place in the world. and their place in the world. During this time, even if a slave was released, it would not change how the person would be treated. They would always be considered a slave. This is the case we see in Philemon. Philemon was a wealthy businessman who owned slaves. Paul pleaded to Philemon to receive his slave back. Paul wants Philemon to accept him and treat him like a brother. Paul writes, You might get him back permanently, no longer as a slave, but more than a slave, as a dearly loved brother. He also reminds Philemon of his Christian responsibility when he says, I command you to do what is right. Paul also wants to change the social standings between the two. Paul expects Philemon to receive him like a friend. This will make them socially equal. Our faith and work we perform as professional social workers needs to be integrated. I'd like to look back at the books and discuss and identify the value and ethical principle from the National Association of Social Workers Code of Ethics to show the Bible passages align. In Galatians, the NASW value of service is seen in the passages. The primary goal of social workers is to help people in need and deal with social problems. The ethical principle of helping people in need is one of the themes in Galatians. The goal of a social worker is to provide effective services by looking at the whole person to understand on the strengths of the person. As social workers, we need to find the resource the poor need and deal with the feelings and emotional toll that poverty has on the person. In James, the NASW value of social justice is seen. Social justice is fairness that exists in society. The ethical principle of challenging social justice and working for social change on behalf of vulnerable individuals is one of the themes in the book of James. Social workers need to know about all existing programs and work for improvement so all people have the opportunity to use the services they need. Programs should not be discriminate against anyone. The Bible shows us that God does not show favoritism or discrimination against people. In the book of Philemon, the NASW value of dignity and worth of all people is one of the themes. The poor in our society needs assistance. Social workers need to continually act as change agents to make improvements to get rid of poverty. Social workers need to treat all people with dignity, especially the needy. In conclusion, by neglecting the poor and needy, we are missing our calling and our privilege to help others. We need to follow the instructions in the Bible and serve others as demonstrated in the Bible. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you, and have a nice day.